From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. So we've talked in our podcast episodes we've kind of gone through your life story, but we haven't gotten to where you ended up selling Midwest BioAg and up to now.
All right.
So what's the last episode we talked about essentially the success and the rise that you had with Midwest BioAg, but what happened towards the end? What made you want to sell it, and then what you're up to now?
Well, and then I had three partners, and one did the finances. That was my brother-in-law. He was from Iceland. My sister met him in Saudi Arabia, and he did all the finances, and he was good at it. And then one other partner did sales, Fred, and the other one did logistics. Well, Fred died. My logistics guy, he put a good crew in place to take care of the delivery and manufacturing. That was that. But then I was in my 70s and say, we just can't keep going. We looked at every option. Trying to get the employees to buy it, and it just nothing fit our model. And the other thing was, every investor looked at it was too heavy weight on knowledge, which is a real dilemma today. See, I used to do monthly trainings. I trained all these people, and it was all based on this being Brooks Ag Consultant. So I said to everybody, said, your fertilizer is more expensive. I said, yeah, but with every bag comes the knowledge. And you see, you got to put some value in the knowledge. We never charged a consulting fee. It was the knowledge. So now what? How do I sell knowledge? How do I sell it if I want to? I was getting in my 70s, and my brother-in-law, he wanted to retire. And so we looked and trying to find investors. So eventually, because that was a dilemma. They were scared of buying it because it was too knowledge intense, and it was scattered all over, and a lot of the guys were getting up in years and wanting to retire, so I couldn't find anybody really.
When you say it was scattered all over, what do you mean by that?
Well, we were in Michigan, I was Idaho, Pennsylvania.
But isn't that what people want? They want nationwide access?
Yeah, but it's fine if you're selling things in a gallon jug in the back of a pickup truck. We're selling tons, in volume, and blending plants, and the cost of putting in dry fertilizer. But the best dollar is still in dry fertilizer. I know everybody wants to do the other stuff because it's easier and you can make more money loading around your back. Your summer sales fit in the back of your truck. And that's cute, but it doesn't really necessarily fit everybody. Yeah. You use it, dry blends are still your best buy. So anyway, then what came along was my wife's nephew was an oceanography professor in California, and he left the university because he said there's a lot of really good ideas sitting on the shelf. Until someone puts money into that idea, it's just a good idea sitting on the shelf. So he got frustrated with all that, and he had a really good job, Catalina Island, and he was an oceanography professor. And so he started working with Wrigley's, who owned Catalina Island. They're in Wisconsin. So every summer he'd come through and we'd go out to dinner, and he figured out I knew something about agriculture. And so then he went out and started looking at investors, and he wanted to get into equity and private equity. And he was working with a private equity firm. And anyway, he came to there, and what we really presented was the fact that what I got introduced to was back years before that, which was I think is the ticket that changed agriculture in the world, and we're having a huge success with it. But it was making fertilizer in the back of an anaerobic digester. We got all these big farms with all that manure, and spreading that manure is not only costly, but it's an environmental damage, and they all put on, I know a farm out here, they're limited to 10 or 15,000 gallons of liquid manure per acre, and it runs over the hose. It's 4 inches thick. Well, how much is that per acre? Nobody's checking, nobody's counting, nobody's watching. But you can't do that forever, and everybody's complaining about the runoff and these big farms. So a lot of them are putting anaerobic digesters in. There's as much money and energy as there's milking the cows, or feeding the cattle, or doing the chickens, or doing the pigs. So we got hooked up with dairy farms anyway. So making a fertilizer on the back of the anaerobic digester, those guys at Utah State University had come up with a procedure to do that in smaller digesting systems. So the first biological ever made came out of cattle paunch material, and that was made by Shell Oil Company way back in the 50s to clean up after oil spills. Cattle paunch material it feeds in the cow for 24 to 48 hours, and those bugs that are digesting that have some real benefits as biologicals. But then it goes to the digester for 3 weeks. So now what's left when it comes out of the digester is a bunch of dead bodies of bugs and biologicals and stimulants and humic acid and all these other things is out of there. Nobody really even knows, but I had seen the benefits and results of it. So like everything else, every investor, we were promised things that didn't really turn out real. It cost more money, it took longer, and it was more expensive to make than we thought. But what's new? You know, Utah State, their numbers were higher than the numbers we were able to get out of. So the investors came on board to make fertilizer on the back of anaerobic digester. And the first place we started was down in Fair Oaks, Indiana. And it was nobody ever done it before. Don't ever be the first mouse. He doesn't get the cheese. It's the next guy. And so, oh my gosh, the place fires, we had troubles with that. We had troubles with equipment. We had troubles getting a quality pellet that didn't fall apart, and on and on and on and went. So that's why the investors came on board. So the first ones went broke. $16 million fertilizer facility on a poor quality product, and it got so expensive. See, originally it was supposed to be cheaper than commercial fertilizer, but that's probably never going to be true because it's too expensive to make the stuff. And so then we had to get the cake from the digester, and then we went through to get the phosphorus precipitated out of it so we could have a high concentrated phosphorus cake, and then go through and then add other minerals to it, because farmers are terrible at buying manure and compost. They think it ought to be free. It's been free for too long. Yeah. And so, but adding the other thing, adding the minerals to that and making a value designer type compost, really, and we went through a lot of it. And so what's really, really crazy today is most of our customers are in North Dakota. And we got all of it sold now, even at high prices. We want to build a new facility in North Dakota. We got a lot of, right now that's in the process. And that's why I'm doing meetings in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Do you realize a guy on the Canadian-North Dakota border this year grew over 200 bushel corn? The guys we work with in North Dakota in a yield contest, 160% higher than the next closest guy in the contest. You realize that's wheat. How about 100 bushel wheat in North Dakota? I know the climate's changing, I know things are moving north, but you see what they got is high pH soils, 8 pHs. And they got a minimal rainfall, and there's just heavy 20, 30 CEC soils and above. And what their problem is, they can't get phosphorus uptake. Phosphorus is the good guy, not the bad guy. You got to get phosphorus moves energy, and you got to have photosynthesis, and you got to develop big root systems. Now they got into strip tilling, and they won't even plant corn if they can't strip till it now, but they grow wheat and things in rotation, just like those guys up in Canada, Manitoba and Saskatchewan. They say, we got the same soils. The rumor's out. I mean, and so anyway, up in North Dakota, what happened is we're not, the biological, whatever's going on there, we kick phosphorus loose. They've been putting on commercial phosphorus for 20 years. Not that they've not been buying it, but their pHs are 8, and the mycorrhizal doesn't live at 8. So your biological link to get phosphorus into a plant's kind of gone in the marginal soils. And so we've had unbelievable results in North Dakota. So now that's why I said, so eventually making fertilizer in the back of anaerobic digesters, if we can we'll get the price down, like I said, eventually, so it's very competitive on price. Because see, there's all these big farms, they'd love to be able to do that. Now you got energy you can make, you got the cow, you make milk, you make energy, and then you make fertilizer.
You want to explain what an anaerobic digester is and what it does?
Yeah, so if you look at it, everybody says, oh, my soil's got to be aerobic. Well, I think your soil, if you take the air out of soil, you get all kinds of putrid things. Everybody says, we got to be aerobic, got to be aerobic, got to be aerobic. If we got to be aerobic, then we ought to be chisel plowing and putting air in the soil. So it burns up organic matter. But anaerobic, that cow, she controls, there's no air in her gut. So anaerobic digesting is a different kind of digesting, but so she's chewing her cud and she's buffering it out, and she provides things to get that digested down. Going into an anaerobic digester then, so there's no air in there. But the byproduct of that, you wouldn't necessarily, is methane, but you wouldn't necessarily want to stick in your soil. So the gas comes off, and the bugs that did that digesting, though, they, like I said, that first biologic came out of Hondo, Texas, and that's what that was, is cattle paunch material and yeast and things. So the stuff that comes out of that digester, those organisms, it's like anything else, they got enzymes and hormones and stimulants, and they have humic acid. That by itself, I don't want my soil to be anaerobic, but using anaerobic organisms in the soil, I think people got that all mixed up. They think, well, oh, my soil, like, how do I deal with that?
Yeah. So you guys solved that problem
Was that before or after you sold it?
That got after we sold it. Then we looked around. The first one was going to be built on a hog operation in Missouri. We're glad that one fell through because it belongs on the back of a dairy cows. Dairy cows are a huge biological system, and the manure from a dairy cow, you got to realize that the cow is fed average cow is fed a pound of mineral a day. See, that's when you talk about free choice and your beef, they don't get that much. So now stuff. A pound of mineral a cow a day because they're fed a lot of high corn solids and they're fed a lot of minerals for buffers. Now that a cow is fed selenium, they're fed minerals other people don't use. Chickens and pigs aren't fed that kind of mineral level that dairy cows are. And so now selenium is really beneficial to your soil and your plants and your plant health. But nobody's putting selenium. It's just like selenium is beneficial for your diet too. But where you get your selenium from? You buy food from areas where selenium is rich in the soils, like flax would be a good source of selenium because it's grown areas where the soils are higher in selenium. So now the dairy farmers got a whole different array of minerals, and a lot of them that have gone through the digester. So we get those minerals plus adding other minerals to that in that stimulant biological thing. We got unbelievable mineral uptake. So it's on a roll. Now it's a matter of that's why we're doing the Commodity Classic in Denver and stuff. The word is out. I'm doing those meetings in Canada because the word is out.
Yeah.
That these things are responding in their soils as a home run. Now we market a lot of all kinds of other places, and I'm a big strip till guy because I want to get that zone. I'm speaking at the strip till conference to say, what would you put in that zone? You know, you wouldn't putting in commercial salt fertilizers and knifing and anhydrous is probably a dumb idea. Why don't you get the root stimmer? You got to fill the soil full of roots. The no-till guy taught us you can't plow, dig, and disc every year and have healthy soil. And the strip till guy said, you got to put a flower pot on every plant. You got to make sure that that zone below is loose enough to grow these huge root systems. Put your nitrogen deep and make sure you fill it full of root systems and make sure the soluble nutrients are low. So now once you got it full of root systems, you leave middle zone alone. So now you got all those earth-growing channels, all those other things that the next plant can grow down, but you can do anything you want to the top. Make sure you got no crust on the ground and you're feeding the surface.
So you sold it to this group of investors, and then you stayed a big part of it, right? But then now it's changed hands again.
It's changed hands, and that investor group went through a bankruptcy thing, and investors got cold feet and didn't want to keep doing it, and there were all kinds of troubles. It was losing money, and
because of this North Dakota?
Because of investment in this digester thing, and because of the fact that that time, you see, when I ran the business with my partners, we were profitable for 25 years, but we were lean and mean, and we did the work. Now you got investors, and they probably got 5 more people in the office than we had, because they want all this paperwork and all this record kind of keeping stuff to make the investors happy. I always said, the investors ought to pay for that. Why are they charging it to my business? But anyway, how things go out here. But now I think it's just a different model. The model is the other thing, is that they wanted me to grow the business tenfold. Every investor did. And I said, I spent 35 years getting it what it was. And just like that, you think, if I could grow tenfold, I'd already done it. You see, if I get a new customer, I stole them from somebody. I stole them from the co-op. I stole them from some other independent. So they switched to another better quality fertilizers and better kind of stuff. So it took education and knowledge. So now I stole them. And so then they didn't say very nice things about me. And then they went back and they tried to talk them, price-wise, they tried to steal them back. And so I couldn't grow tenfold. How many people I have to steal to grow tenfold? Well, now we're partnering up with other companies. I'm still at BioAg. I actually thought I would be kicked out, but now I'm there. I'm called the founder, and I'm obviously very passionate about it. And I've got the history, and we do trainings now to get our consultants trained. And we're training teams.
Why do you think you were going to be kicked out?
I don't know, just because of the direction investors and things were looking at going, and I thought they were trying to get away from education. I was focused on education. They were focused on sales. But now I think it's come around again. There's a really nice group of investors own Midwestern BioAg, and I think they see this thing. It's not that it's been really probably. You got 3 really unique proprietary products. What happened in the old days, I said you could put the greatest secrets in the world I could put on a billboard going into town. Religions know this too. And people write, they don't get it, they don't get it, they don't get it, they don't get it. But now people are getting it. They all of a sudden realize that, fertilizers make a difference. I got to have a balance of quality, different type of fertilizers. Strip till people, they realize what you put down in that zone makes a difference. And so all kinds of fertilizer companies out here. In the old days, the competition, whether it be the co-op or whoever it would be, independents, would make money on chemicals. Well, that got kind of squeezed down. Then they made money on fertilizers. Now people selling fertilizer are vertically integrated. In Mexico, All the big farms are buying fertilizer direct from China, no middleman whatsoever. Now that's Mexico. As I work in Spanish, we get down to Mexico quite a bit. So then it was hard to make money on chemicals anymore. That got squeezed down. Then it got hard to make money on fertilizers, conventional fertilizers. Margins got really squeezed. And then they made money on service was the other aspect. They more. We only made money on. We had to make our living on fertilizers. They had all these other things. Now service, they can't find good help. So now what are they doing? They're looking at switching. We sold our facilities in northern Illinois to a conglomerate of half a dozen co-ops. And they're doing what they call the green, and there's a lot of people really getting into this thing. So now people are springing up all over looking at alternative fertilizers and looking at, we have to get more efficient with nutrients. And this nutrient use efficiency has been sliding downhill, downhill, downhill. The fertilizer you put on dead soils does not get into a plant. That's why biology and carbon are starting to understand it a whole lot better. There's a lot more people having a lot more success. And the other thing, years ago, I think someone growing 400 to 600 bushel corn. You were talking about it down. I think it's, I might have this not 100% right, but I think it's a precision ag farm in Illinois. Had over 400 bushel corn this year. You know what it is?
And soil algae, I remember that. And soil algae was talking about it at one of our webinars.
What I got this, here's the story I got. Now, it could be a little off. I think they did corn and beans in strips. And then the next strip, they grew a cover crop. And then corn and beans in strips. And in that cover crop, they pulled a chicken tractor with chickens up front and pigs behind.
Yeah, that's...
And then the next year they had that's 400 bushel corn. So what's our potential? So now people realize years ago we thought, 150 bushel corn is our potential. Now everybody says, no, it's 400 or 500 bushel. So now to get that, you can't put more commercial fertilizer on, and would have done that.
Yeah.
So now you got to come up with biology.
So you think the mixture of the pigs and chickens are doing something different than fertilizer?
I think because of the manures, because of the plants, because of the chickens, the diet they're fed, and because of they're changing and feeding the biology, the pigs are probably stirring it up and converting some of those forages. They're fed grain out there also, just like Joe Solomon feeds the chickens out with the chicken. That was why you see it dramatically changed. There's probably some salt. All the chicken manure is really pretty hot stuff. Because corn and soybeans run through a chicken.
Yeah, so you think I should probably just run chickens on our...
Yeah, and especially if you
fields.
get some nice, you don't have to feed them soybeans. You got all that little clover and things out there. Feed them some grain and follow behind those little chicken tractors. The crops will be different.
Yeah.
About how many of those can you cover?
Well, the problem is scale on that.
Yeah.
You need so many of them.
And if online, there's some now, these are huge, huge buildings that are automatically solar moved. You see those thousands and thousands of birds in each one.
They're pretty cheap.
Are they?
No.
$100,000
Yeah.
for one?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a cool option to move away from, especially the layers, the big layer barns. Getting structures like that would be really interesting.
Just like this avian flu thing, all these little buildings around here for the Mennonite and the Amish guys have, the risk is certainly lower. You got 30,000 birds in a building, not 1 million.
Yeah.
So if you have to clean out, if one building gets it, you still got issues. This avian flu is going to be bigger than anything we've seen before because the wild birds. You go to these dairy farms, the starlings and birds are constantly eating the cattle feed and pooping in it. Mm-hmm. I said, these guys, it's a struggle to get them out of here. How do you stop the wild birds from getting out in their fields and in their feed and everything else? So avian flu is not going to be as controlled as easy as some other things are. Because the wild birds, really, how are you going to control them? You can't.
So are you worried about it?
I think it's going to make things diversify a little different. I guess there's going to be issues. Well, vaccines do it. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But every flock is not going to get wiped out because birds still have an immune system. Out there in your pasture with your little chickens eating that nice forage and good balanced minerals and fresh forage every day and fresh air might not have the issues.
Yeah.
Now, a few might get it, but it's not going to get wiped out.
Right. That might be the solution. The bigger concern is if it were to transition over to cattle and humans, right?
Yeah, it is an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, that'd be unfortunate.
Yeah, just like when the COVID came from there or how it came about, but when it starts jumping species and things, and out here but again, I think it's going to get people focusing on the fact that you better get your immune system working.
Yeah.
You better get your animal's immune system working. Fresh air, fresh food, balanced nutrition, all kinds of things. Now, it'll take the stress away from them. Man, there's some farms out here doing a really good job on larger scale. I was over in Poland, and it's unbelievable. Took a 700 cow dairy farms and made them 400 cow dairy farms. Cows like to lay in the same stall every day. They got robotic milkers. Instead of a line of 12 trying to get milk, how about 2 in line? It's really fun to watch. Now, they still were having a few foot problems. Their ration's hotter than I wanted to feed it. In other words, a little more concentrate, more corn solids. But if they back off and make it better for the cow, instead of getting 100 pounds of milk, you might get 80. I know some really successful farms at 80 pounds of milk a cow a day, and turnover is low, and they're selling breeding stock now because these guys, their turnovers are tremendous, and raising a heifer is really expensive. And so farming is the only industry is all we talk about is volume. Oh, I got 100 pounds of milk a day. I had 300 bushel corn. Every other industry talks about profitability and business expenses, right? Farmers are geared to thinking about volume. It's coffee shop bragging rights.
You think it's because the prices fluctuate so much that they just want more and more?
I suppose they think that's the way to get more profit. If I got my certain set fees per acre, how do I get more? I mean, years ago, they used to joke at us organic guys, you ever burn up all that diesel fuel? And I said, well, I know nowadays the tractors are pretty efficient, number one. I said, the other thing is that we're not bringing in chemicals made in Germany, and we're not coming out and scouting 3 times. A guy to grow 100 bushel soybeans makes more trips across the field than this organic guys do. 9 trips across this field to grow 100 bushel soybeans. Foliar feeding it, putting on fungicides, doing all these other things. What did that cost those energy-wise? It's really gone downhill. So we're driving in that system. I think now we got such a surplus out here, but farmers don't know what to do except produce more.
What do you think it would cost someone to do 9 trips across an acre versus the $600 an acre and mineral to start weaning things off?
Yes, that's a good, really good.
Well, that's the study that we need.
That's the study we need,
and we need to be able to look at a scope of 5+ years instead of
like I said,
year over year.
And we gotta come up with the fact that when they grow cover crops and make to this new system, how do they make the transition? How do they get away from that? How do they get away from all those expenses? Just like I said, biochar is probably really beneficial for biology and for holding minerals, but the farmers don't know how to make money doing it. They don't know that if I put biochar in, can I cut my nitrogen? Can I do, see, and that's why this guy's growing a couple 100 bushel corn an acre with a half pound nitrogen, some put on 1.1. That's what university recommendations are. So how do you get to half? Well, you gotta have biology, you gotta have cover crop, you gotta have different things. So the cover crops aren't growing because farmers don't know how to make money with them. And that's what needs to be researched and trialed out. Just like if I fix my soil, like we've done on this farm, and I present my data all over, and when guys say, oh, you got cheaper land up in Wisconsin. We can't do that. We can't have every other year profitable, and the next year we don't make any money. I said, tell me how you're going to make money on $8 soybeans this year. I want to show you. I want to see your numbers. How are you going to make money paying $4 an acre rent and $8 soybeans, and you're growing 50 bushel beans, 70 bushel beans? Tell me how you're going to make money. I want to see it. And I said, why don't you just, if you're not going to make any money, why don't you just build the soil? Now I could, if I grew that cover crop, like we put rye in after our corn, and now we'll frost seed our clover, and then I can now drop my insecticides, drop my fungicides, drop my pesticides, cut my nitrogen in half, drop my biotechnology. Now let's talk about profitability.
Well, what would be their way of getting something off an acre of cover crops? Grazing or baling?
Grazing, I think. I don't want to take it away.
Right, yeah. What if you baled it and fed it back where you baled it?
I suppose you could feed it out there.
Yeah. I think of like sorghum Sudan grass, you bale it in, when it's alive and doing well. Yeah. Instead of grazing it like we do.
And that big farm out in western Nebraska, the first investor is my wife's nephew. He's involved in a large cattle operation. He got a grass-fed beef that they've gone up against the Wagyu beef on taste and done really well. It's a different herb mixture. They feed them different genetics. You've got to get them to gain fast. You can't take a two-year-old to get to market economically. So they're talking 20,000 head. You know how much feed that they're going to feed them off? But that's the western Nebraska. They don't get all the moisture and they don't get all the snow. And now you got to have water out there to feed them if you're going to keep them out there in the wintertime. And see that, I know Gabe Brown, they can eat snow up there, but boy, that doesn't work for everybody.
It wouldn't have worked this winter.
No, it'd been really tough here. I'd like to see your cows would go 3 months without water.
I know, it is crazy.
It doesn't work everywhere, does it?
No.
Now, those irrigation systems out, they got pivots out there so they can give them water. They'd have to do that in Nebraska, but then they'd stockpile that feed. Now, there's an added cost to that. Growing our cover crops, see if I could graze it, then...
Like a dairy farm. Like a dairy farm could instead of having... Like say you're doing a corn alfalfa rotation, couldn't you in theory every third or fourth year instead of doing the alfalfa do a cover crop mix and then send them out there and graze it?
And
to get you would get something a little different than just doing the alfalfa.
Hey, eco farmers, this is Taylor Henry with Acres U.S.A. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoy interviewing these folks. If you're serious about regenerative agriculture, I've got an incredible resource you need to check out, the Acres U.S.A. membership. You farm in the physical world, and you deserve a physical printed magazine to match. Since 1971, Acres U.S.A. magazine has been the leading voice in ecological agriculture, delivering the best insights from regenerative farmers, agronomists, and researchers to help you farm profitably without toxic chemicals. Our membership included physical and digital copies of the magazine each month of the year, which has always been a standard for Acres U.S.A., but we wanted to over-deliver on content. When I acquired this business, I was happy to find that we had years of audio files from presentations at our annual EcoAg conference. And guess what? They were hiding. Well, not anymore. We developed this membership portal that gives you access to the recordings from farmers like Dave Brown, Gary Zimmer, Joel Salatin, and Mark Shepard. We also include recordings of private events. Finally, if you are like me and you like listening to content, we are now producing a membership-only podcast of each issue of the magazine, so you can consume each article while you're out in the field. To make things even sweeter, you'll get discounts on books, workshops, and events to keep expanding your knowledge. So are you ready to take your farming to the next level? Join today for a ridiculously low price at eco-farming.com or see details in the notes.
Now, a lot of the dairy farms have switched, after corn solids, they put in triticale or rye, and then they cut that as a forage, and they quit growing alfalfa altogether.
Yeah.
It's just one cutting a year. They don't have to make 4 cuttings in the weather, and trying to get hay made is a challenge and the struggle out here. But that's just grasses out there. That's required. They got all this manure. I'm not so sure it's going to get their soils healthy. Now, having a fibrous-rich system like rye or triticale is going to be better than following corn silage. But it almost seems like if we would take after corn and put the rye in and frost seed it and then use that for grazing later in the year on those dairy farms, even for the young stock, is a way that I could get. I want to get to be able to. I can grow my own nitrogen. It's the only thing I can do on a farm. I can grow my own nitrogen. I can extract minerals from soil with cover crops from different plants, but I can grow my own nitrogen. So if I just looked at another system, and I think there's where research and things have got to come about. Maybe
I mean, it would make tons of sense for a dairy farm, because I think a lot of these guys are breeding Angus to their milking cows, and then they end up having these Angus Holstein crosses as a secondary type of product. Like, why not just, and you're feeding them bales of hay, like, why not just run them out on the field and feed them the hay out there?
I feed them the hay out there. Why not? Now, I think for the dairy farm right now, that little calf bringing $800 to $1,000 on 3 days old, they say,
You'd be getting rid of them right away. But fats are, people are getting 3,000.
Yeah. Why not? Sex semen has really changed things. That's why they can have get their heifer calves out of less cows. That's why they can half the herd they can breed the sex semen, the other half to breed the Angus. And the number one beef has always been Holstein bull calves, and now it's going to be a Holstein Angus, which is a huge improvement, I think, because we need a little more Holstein.
You're saying the number one beef animal
has always been
Holstein.
In this country. Yeah. Holstein bull calves.
Yeah.
Holstein heifer calves, Holstein cull cows has been the number one.
Well, people are getting $2,500 for Holstein fats.
Yeah, it's like in the beef world, nobody wants to raise replacements anymore. But in the Holstein world, the turnover is incredible. They have to figure out how to keep them alive. You can't keep killing your cows and outgrowing a whole bunch of replacements. That's cost a lot of money. If they only milk for a year or two and they're gone, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So what is the current state of Midwest BioAg? What's your involvement with it? How do you see the organization moving in the next 5-10 years?
I think what I brought the first investors on is making fertilizer on the back of anaerobic digesters, and all the large farms. We're the only country in the world that allowed farms to get this huge, and without really a good, sane method of dealing with the air quality and water quality and all this extra manure. So making this fertilizer in the back of anaerobic digesters, our project in North Dakota keeps expanding. There'll be another, in 2 years, we'll have a new fertilizer facility up there. Hopefully we can make improvements. It can be more efficient, it can do better, and at least it'll be located where we can sell the product. And that'll produce 150,000 tons of fertilizer. That'll be the new fertilizer of the future. Not only will we drive yields with that like we've never done before. So my role in BioAg, just like going to Commodity Classic, is we got a lot of people out here now who are trying to partner up with other companies. And so it's still to get them to understand this thing and get them to see where people are receptive. Years ago, I never got dragged in the world. Now, just like that 8,000 acre farm up in Canada, they never talked to me 25 years ago. Now they're calling up and want to know how they get out of the hole they're in. And so I think that all these big farms we have a solution to it. And I think it'll be my lifetime, and now it's the second one's being built, and then from there on it'll just take off. And then we need to be built all across this countryside. All these big farms are going to realize I can make energy and I can make fertilizer on my farm and get rid of this stuff out here and be a really good for the environment and putting a biological on every acre. Fertilizer will be sold with carbon. That's like putting char. I'm not opposed to char, but putting carbon in fertilizer. The dumbest idea man ever came was putting nutrients in solution, dump them on the land, hope the plant can get them, and that they wouldn't run off and get tied up. Of course they run off and get tied up. So now putting them with carbon, getting them that carbon biological, whether it be cover crops or getting with that manure, digestate stuff, and have the minerals tied in that biological cycle. Now they don't leach to canny road and they delivered to the plant. Why are we getting those yield responses in the Dakotas? We're delivering the minerals that were never delivered before.
What would you tell the other companies that are similar to the company that you started, the importance of the education piece?
Yeah.
Because I think, technically Acres kind of provides that for companies.
Yes,
and
they do.
I think, to me, it's marketing 101. You start with education and then your product sells itself. Yeah. But what do you think the pieces that people are missing with that? They just want to...
Well, I think they're grabbing bites and pieces from things and not looking at it as a system. We got to get them to think about chemical, physical, and biological. How do I deliver my nutrients? What nutrients do I need? And we've got to monitor the plants. And John's doing the sap testing, and that's during the growing season. To me, you got to have a real healthy, nice growing crop, and then start measuring the sap. A sick crop, you already know it's not working. So get the basis figured out. We got that figured out. I think the nutrients, and then the biology, what does biology need? And then physical, yes, we eventually can get to no-till on a lot of land, but not all land. And this wet and heavy soils and compaction, that's why I think strip till makes a lot of sense out here. So I think we're going to see, I saw these other companies, they got a product and they got a piece of the puzzle. They got to be able to recognize that just a piece of the puzzle. We need the puzzle to make this whole thing work.
Yeah. Education's important.
Oh yeah, and Acres has been instrumental, and of course that's what Chuck Walter started with Allwork, and the education of that. And I think the thing is for farmers out here, it always seems like you said, there's almost a little bit of infighting. There's almost like mine's better than yours kind of a thing. And
there's definitely that.
There's definitely that. And so I've never kept any secrets my whole career, and I get a little pushback, like I said, because
well, I think there's that too. People are afraid to do the education piece in a public forum because they think they're giving away their secrets.
Yes, and for me years ago, it was so obvious that nobody else was catching on. And so, you guys, when I started the company, I had no money, and nobody heard of what we were doing. And so we started out, I stopped last week up here at Abbotsford to a customer that started when I started the company. The family's still with us, and they had the dairy breakfast up there at Abbotsford a year ago. They milk like 400 or 500 cows, all robots, and the three boys are involved with Dad, and it's a nice family farm transition going on. But when I started the business, they never forgot. He still brings it up. I forced the farmer to go to a 3-day class when I started this, and I made him pay to go to a class.
A dairy farmer.
Dairy farmers, all dairy farmers.
That's a tough sell.
Yes, and 3 days a week, it was wintertime, and one day was on biological farming principles, and one day was on growing quality forages, and the next day was feeding cows. And they're all dairy farmers. So they thought that was just, I think they came, and we had a nice crowd in eastern Wisconsin. They thought it was insane that, no, in those days people were getting fed free dinners to go to a meal, and I made them pay, and I made them come for 3 weeks, and I said, if you fail, you're taking me with you, and that's not fair. I want you to understand where we're going and what we're doing. Now you got to also recognize that in the beginning, because our fertilizers were so different and my concepts were so different, they were all Albrecht conference. How far did he get on his own? Neil Kinsey's been out here all over the world and teaching people, but I didn't take over agriculture, and that's why I couldn't get the fertilizer I wanted, and farmers aren't used to paying for education. They'd rather buy the wrong stuff as compared to paying for education. And so, but in the beginning it was solving problems. I go to the farms and they had bulk tank problems. Their regulators on their milk machines weren't working. I had a really good guy. He's 99 years old this year, and he's still my first consultant I ever hired. He's in the hospital right now. I just got the notice yesterday he had a minor stroke. But he was really good at milk machines. He helped build milk machines and stray voltage. I got hooked up with stray voltage, so I had to go to the farm and fix what was broken. In those days, in the old days, my dad, we never had dry cows separate from milk cows. We grew dry cow hay. Well, now the harvesters came along and you got taught, if you're going to pay $100,000 for a harvester, you got taught how to make better, cut your hay early, make better quality forages. Well, you can't feed that to a dry cow. So I said to the farmers, you got to give me your dry cows. We're going to make you better quality forages, but that, you can't feed it to your dry cows. During the dry cow period, give me your dry cows and give me your forages. And I did some things about changing their forages and changing out, and then fed their dry cows, and let's fix what's broken on your farm. And that's the only way I survived. It wasn't about the concepts about biological farming. That was way over their head. They had no concept of what I was talking about. But when they did that, the dry cows got healthy and had a healthy calf, and people were having trouble because they started making better quality forages, and all of a sudden now they're in trouble. I started in southeastern Minnesota. Most of my business came from A.O. Smith Harvester. Well, you liked it, called Blue Ridge in southeastern Minnesota, because the guys, all the harvesters that were there, but the harvester never taught them how to make money. And that's why they didn't survive, and they had problems they didn't fix. They put up a harvester, and next thing they kept feeding the cows the way they were feeding them. They had nitrate or feeding urea to their cattle. They had nitrate. They used to feed cob corn and dry hay. Now they want the hail, time moisture, shell corn. Oh, that's not dry cow feed. And besides, you better learn how to feed it. You better so get the lick tank out of the yard, and we had to feed some brewer's yeast. We did all kinds of things. That's how I got a lot of my customers was through harvester, fixing broken farms.
Yeah. So I've been to a biodynamic conference recently, and I'm kind of learning about it. What are your thoughts about biodynamics?
My thoughts
because you were buddies with Hugh Lovell.
Yeah, Hugh Lovell. In the beginning, we locked horns on a lot of things. In the end, he became both a biological consultant and a biodynamic consultant.
Yeah.
You can't just bury horns and put things. That blows people away.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that you're not involved in your farm. I'm not saying your mind is not involved in your farm. I'm not saying that your energy is not involved in your farm. I think you are a part of it in some of these biodynamic preps. But for gardeners and things where they overdone minerals and stuff, it's probably an easier sell than, because by itself, it never took over. But I think it's a piece out here. I'm never opposed to it. I don't mind doing that. We've got other biologicals and things out here. I think there's a lot, soils are chemical, physical, biological, electromagnetic. We understand all these things about it. There's currents and flows, but you got to deal with the basis that people can grasp.
Yeah, and that's what, I mean, they got into things that I guess were interesting in some ways and over my head, but then you'd pull that person aside after they were done talking, and most of them would say that the first thing you have to do is make sure your biologicals are
Make sure the soil is healthy and mineralized, and then you play with the fringes.
Yeah.
Start with
because
the
like the stuffing a cow horn with manure and burying it in the ground probably does have something different that comes out of that.
Yeah, it's a biological.
Whether it has anything to do with like the way that you stir it after the fact.
Now you got to have a certain cow and there's certain hormones and there's all those, so there's hormones, there's all kinds of things we don't understand. But now I'm on a farm in Australia, 6,000 acres, and this pile of horns would fit on top of this tabletop. And I said, I'm confused. He said, I just go through the middle of my farm, it spreads. His farm was a disaster.
It does what? So Australia biodynamics is really popular.
Really popular. But his farm, 6,000 acres, one little pile of horses. He went through the middle of his farm and he thought it would spread across 6,000 acres. I'm sorry. His crops were terrible. This land was really short of minerals. Try that on your farm. I want to see how far you get. Wow. You don't have any minerals there. Grazing is a step forward because you're not disturbing it so much, but you still need these minerals. And there's what biodynamics. And they didn't put a system together. Yeah. And what they use, I'm not opposed to their preps and things out here, and I've read a lot, and I followed a lot of that. I had to work with farmers that were grounded.
Yeah.
If you want to, it's much more complex than we think it is sometimes, but yes.
All right, so this is I'm sure you get this question a lot, but so the same Gary Zimmer that came to Wisconsin back in, what year would you come here?
We moved here in '79.
Okay. That same situation with today's situation. So you come here without much. What would you do today?
What would I do today? That's starting
a farm up, or starting a.
Yeah, to start the business. See, I started the business years ago because all you could buy was DAP and 0060. And you go where BioAg is not then. I don't want to just say BioAg, but because I travel to new areas. All they got is a nitrogen source and DAP and 0060. So when I started, I couldn't get the fertilizer I want. So now today, there's a lot of companies, they got ammonium sulfate, they got MAP instead of DAP, they've got trace minerals out here, they got calcium sources, they got pelleted gypsum. Well, I might be able to choose and find better sources, but at least there's more options out here to do that. What if I started this business? All the small dairy family farms are going. I'm a family farm kind of guy, and now the dairy farms are big. I don't do nutrition on big dairy farms. I'm going to Portugal and some islands out there, and Azores, whatever island, on dairy nutrition. But there's grazers and small family, smaller farms. To go a farm, the big ones, they all got the same computer ration, and it's all about getting volumes of milk, and it's not about cow health or quality of product or quality of life for the cow. You know, and so I don't fit that anymore. But on soils where so we got a different world out here, and just like we got rid of a lot of the small family farms where they maybe couldn't compete or whatever reasons are, I still think we're going to have to get down to, we're going to eventually figure out health and nutrition someday, and we're going to realize that people, what I hear the other day, we're on the top 35 industrialized countries in the world, we're 34th on health and #1 on the cost of health. How long can we keep doing this?
Yeah.
And so where would my focus be on our farm? We went organic back in the old days just because I got introduced to some issues with in Hawaii when we went to graduate school with putting chemicals on pineapples, and it caused cows to abort. And I said, wow, what about people are eating those pineapples? So I became questioning organic. And then I was at the garden show in Madison this weekend. Prairie Moon Nursery is in Winona, Minnesota. That was my first introduction to organic. That was Wiskoi Valley Community Farm when I was teaching tech school, and I got introduced to organic, and they had lots of issues. And I got involved with some really good organic farms. But when my son started farming, he was 16 years old, he bought his first farm, 100% debt financed. Yes, I had another business, and yes, I didn't need money from the farm. I had other income, but the farm had to stand on its own.
But don't you think that probably is the solution right now, where I think people coming into this world would like to just farm, but is it?
Yes.
I don't know if it's that possible.
I know, and that's why us as a we bought.
Like, why not create a system? Keep your day job or keep some income coming in, and then create a system that you can manage around it.
I think that's probably what's got to be done in a lot of ways. Out now in Iowa, they said if you farm less than 1,500 acres, you need a job in town.
Yeah.
I can't make it. Now, we're not good at standing on the street marketing, but I tried to do direct marketing. We bought a meat market. We had Black Earth Meat Swap. We got Conscious Carnivore. We still got a meat market in Madison. Does really, really well. But that's all local choice and local chosen food. I think people are going to, that got the money and even the wherewithal to be able to go out and find your own food sources in these farmers markets. When did Dane County Farmers Market start? You know, it was in the 70s. After it wasn't much. We couldn't make a living doing it. We had grass-fed beef back in the 80s. Well, you couldn't sell it to anyone. Nobody knew what it was. So now there's a different. What would a farm starting out have to be? I think they need to have a better connection with their consumers. They got to do something that, whether you need someone in the family, whether it's through farmers markets or websites or whatever it might be, if you're going to be a smaller scale farmer, have a job in town.
Yeah.
And raise a few.
I think the marketing portion of it is almost another business that people.
It is.
They don't like to.
My son doesn't want to. He farms alone because he doesn't like dealing with people.
Yeah.
No, he's not like his dad.
I don't blame him, but.
No, you know, and he farms 1,500 acres now, and we're the only farm getting smaller. He's going to be 1,200 acres this year. He's heading down to. He's got a few debts to get rid of yet. And but you know, he owns a lot of land. We bought that all land. He's very, very successful. He owns all his equipment. He takes really good care of it. And he has a little help. This is unique farming in southwestern Wisconsin. We got 1,000 acres, let's say, and about half of that's woods and hunting land. A lot of his buddies can't find a place to go hunting anymore, but they got skills. He's got an old truck he's restoring for my brother-in-law this winter. It's a 1991 F-250 dually that's never been in the winter when he got 60,000 miles on it. He's got a friend that's got a body shop. They want to hunt. So we gave up hunting, let everybody else hunt. This guy's a welder. That guy works with heating and air conditioning. And these guys come out here and they drive tractors and skills they got. So you got tractor drivers in the spring and harvest in the fall. He needs a little help. And we got one guy on the farm. His health isn't the greatest, but he's elderly and he still drives some tractor for him. But Nick pretty well farms alone. And if he thinks he can handle 800 acres and scattered all over southern Wisconsin, he wants to just farm the land he owns eventually.
Yeah. So what would you, I guess, tactically, what would you go into? Would you even explore the idea of getting into dairy if you're just starting?
Hey there. Did you attend our EcoAg conference this year in Madison, Wisconsin? Well, if you didn't, or if you did, we've got the recordings now available. Get on-demand access to every session with the EcoAg recordings. Learn directly from the pioneers of soil health, livestock integration, and profitable regenerative systems, all at your own pace. Speakers include Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, John Kemp, Joel Salatin, and a lot more. We also have additional products that include the full-day workshops done by Matt Powers, John Kemp, Nigel Palmer, Jordan Green, Mark Shepard, and Austin Unruh. These workshops are in depth and will help you dig deep on the presenters' topics. Grab your recordings now at conference.eco-ag.com/24 recordings or find the link in the notes. Because the best investment you can make is in your own knowledge. Now back to the show.
Nick's, my son's got a friend that is trying to figure out, he's got a job in town, he'd like to farm, and his grandpa had an organic dairy farm, but the old barn hasn't had cattle in 20 years, and so you'd almost have to build a system, and he was talking about putting up for 100 some cows, but didn't come from that world. He's never milked cows and been on a farm. His grandpa did. Wow, my son's trying to talk him out. My son's got a lot of skill. Milking cows, you got to marry those little babies.
Yeah.
And so that's another whole world. And so there's a lot of people really passionate about their cows. You better have a love for cows and like staying home and being with those cows.
Yeah.
Now you can get robotic milkers and you can get some. It's hard to get help. That's why we couldn't get the help. If I had to do over again, when my kids were really good at it, we probably would have built. And when I built, we did the old barn and cobbled it together, and now it's all wore out. And we should have started with a brand new system. Would you invest in a brand new dairy setup when your son is 19 years old and he's milked a few cows on the side and you're going to spend $1 million to put up a new dairy setup for 300 cows out in the middle of your field? Would you do that?
No.
No. So we should have. That'd have been the smart move, because that same facility is $3 million today or so.
Yeah.
But then,
Plus, it's like you should have bought all the land. You could have got your hands on it.
oh God, we got all we could afford. We passed a couple up. That was a mistake. Now we got enough. We got enough.
I think it's coming around though. For the person who would be getting into it, if you're buying $8,000 an acre land, maybe $600 an acre amendments the first couple of years isn't that crazy.
That's right. And that's right. You better figure out where do I get so this thing is really profitable. This farm is there.
Yeah.
You look at my soil test. They're the opposite of yours. You say, what do you need? Well, really, there's nothing left to fix. So then, all I got to do is get those nutrients in the carbon biological cycle. And our system of what we do is extreme, but it really, we're trying to get more rye markets going, because as a cover crop or as food, I've actually shipping 10 semi-loads of rye to California. Nobody wants to grow rye anymore because there's no money in it. You can't get it near wheat because it's almost a weed in wheat. And so, guys, I talked to someone yesterday in California looking for more rye for flour. Rye is quite beneficial for nutritional purposes for humans. I mean, rye and hogs in Denmark, they took the antibiotics away from hogs. If you feed them rye, you don't need the antibiotics. They quit tail biting, they settle down to become more calm. Countries, I was in Poland last year, 40% of the flour consumed is rye flour. In this country, it's 0.7. Mm-hmm. But every picture's rye is this little tight, dense load, and they associate rye with caraway seeds. I don't like caraway seeds myself, but that's not rye. Now they got a new rye that raises like the regular bread. I got one in Madison. They make Origin breads. They got rye, spelt, and a small amount of wheat, and it's all sourdough. Man, it's a regular loaf of bread, and that's nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense that we find better markets for it because it's a lot easier to grow than the other things.
Oh yeah, and it fits in the rotation really well. And even for cover crops, it's the only thing that most people in this part of the country. What are you going to go after corn's harvested? Now we fight out here because our extension services still tell the farmer, oh, you got to be rye planted by November 1st. No, I got guys planted it last week. You just got to go through a vernalization. It's got to get cold so it goes into seed. Otherwise, it won't. So we plant as late as Christmas. We waited this year. It was so wet this fall. We waited till the ground had an inch of frost. And my favorite way to farm it, let an inch of frost get on your ground, or an inch and a half, and then go out there because your tractor won't sink in. You can go, and then the tillage tool is like putting a cutting board under your disc blades, and then we just break that crust and throw the seed on behind the star wheels, and there's no mud, there's no dirt, there's no compaction. It's my perfect way to grow cover crops. That was Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So our extension service, they got it planted by November 1st. Where did they get their rules from? Who told them that? They haven't gotten over that yet. It scares people away from doing it.
Why do you think it is? Because they just haven't tested it enough?
Haven't
They're just reading it out of a book.
understand, didn't test enough, read it in a book somewhere.
Yeah.
Don't understand rye. The guys that are doing it understand rye. Now, having said
How was
that,
your rye market this year? Do you feel like you picked up some more?
We didn't have as last year. We made, we're still capable of making mistakes, but we don't, So last year, what we did was, last fall, a year ago, it was kind of wet. We got our rye planted late. Last spring, the end of February, it was warm and growing really well. So we frost seeded our clover. The clover. Then it rained and got really nice, and it was dry early. And then it rained, so the clover overgrew the rye. And so we only got about 15,000 bushel of rye last year, and because it was raining, we had some couple of varieties of rye that all the wetness that tipped over and was lodging, and the germination was off. So I couldn't sell it for cover crop seed. I can sell it for bakeries and flour and distilleries to make rye whiskey out of it. So we're still a little annoyed by that. There's 50 cents worth of a $70 bottle of rye whiskey is 50 cents worth of rye. The farmer gets 50 cents out of that.
Yeah.
Gee, right. That's still annoying. I don't make my own rye whiskey, but I'm not a drinker either. So rye, then, now we got a variety of rye, the Danko variety. We planted all Danko last fall. That stuff stood last year like little troopers, and the ryemen lodged up against it, and it still held up the Danko, held up the rye. So now we got a variety that we really like. And we got an air seeder. We don't plant it in rows anymore. We bulk spread it, because then it doesn't get so thin, and we plant low rates of rye. But I think now if I get my germination was really high on the Danko, it was clean, there was hardly any ergots or anything in it, and so it made all falling and baking numbers really well last year. So we got a variety we really like, and now we may be up, if we can get 20,000 bushel of rye, and we're willing, I'm setting up on this farm, like everything costs money. We're all about efficiency on this farm. We're going to clean it going into the bin. I'm changing the combine, putting new sieves in the combine that comes from out in Canada to clean up wheat better. We're going to have I got a grain cleaner out of Poland. We're going to set it in front of the bins. We're going to clean the rye into the bin so I can sell it right off this farm, go into conventional farmers and see we're willing to sell it for $10 a bushel. And right now, if you go to Iowa, you're going to pay $15. Because who's going to grow rye in Iowa?
Yeah.
So, but even at $10 a bushel, and we're getting 40 bushel an acre, that's not a lot, but it covers all our expenses that year. And then the corn's where we make our money.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's a scenario for you. What would you mix, a cover crop mix, to get the soil primed up and then have pigs graze it?
Yeah, now,
I was thinking plant corn and then plant something with the corn, but then I don't know if that would work against it because the corn isn't necessarily healing anything.
Yeah, and then the corn, it's really hard to interseed. If you grow a huge corn crop, now maybe some of these new shorter varieties of corn, but then you got weed issues out here. I did interseeding for years. We used to make a green and gold, we called it, because we're from Wisconsin. That green and gold movie was really fun to watch. That's about family farms falling apart. That just came out. My wife and I saw it.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's worthy of seeing. It's about farming is not a living. It's a life, and it's about the passion for animals and the passion for soil. We might have lost a bit of that in agriculture. Mm-hmm. We all know that. And so, so what for hogs, and this is my cover crop mixer, so we frost seed that clover. Could we do something else? Now, a lot of farmers say, well, I'll plant my wheat, and we only plant like 80 pounds of seed per acre, and some guys are putting on 150 pounds of seed. Well, then it gets so thick, and I can't have it interfere with my cover crop. Then they say, well, we'll take the cover crop off, and we'll plant rye in August. You know what the problem with that is? Last fall, it didn't rain. What would have happened last August? Nothing grew.
Yeah.
Not only that, if you then till it in the fall to plant a cover crop in the fall. Now, on an ideal year, that'll work, but you'll have volunteer rye that'll just overpower it. Now, there's no volunteer rye in our clover. Only if the rye clover's missing in a spot for some reason or another, because we frost seed it and maybe rye lodged and killed it, we'll get volunteer rye. But otherwise, it can't compete with the clover. But if you till that field, it'll be solid rye, because enough seeds went down and you lost enough in combining. Radish in March, because it won't till it. It won't. It'll be all flowers. It'll top will grow, not the bottoms, and so.
I'm kind of wondering if we were to graze our cover crops once in May or June, and then do something in after we graze it once, like in that June, July time frame.
Yeah, and then instead of frost seeding the clover, just whatever that cover crop you planted in the fall to graze that seed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like our system, and realize that there's other ways, there's other things you can do. And then to have that cocktail mix, there's different things that animals would eat and stuff, but you know, even chickens out here, if you take a look at this clover and all that rye, and volunteer rye came back up, there's all that straw out there. Pigs would, all those roots, all those nodules, all that stuff, and the pigs would certainly plow your field if you gave them the chance.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Gary, well, we appreciate everything you do for us. It's been almost a year now since we've met.
Yeah, good. And I appreciate you guys tackling that. You know, if you'd have asked me before you bought it what it was going to be like, I could have warned you. No different than buying a farm. You know what? You got to get your skin in the game, and you got to go through it. And I appreciate what you're all doing, because you have your skin in the game, and you realize that's not an easy thing to do and what direction it can go. But yeah, I was you. I'd sit down, and if you are going to have something at Acres, a track for gardeners and things, but the focus really needs to be, we need to change agriculture from the soil, from a perspective of the world.
Yeah.
And that means larger farms and larger people getting, and they're ready, and they're looking for information, and to come on with the successful farms, always got to be a part of it. You can't just have businesses selling their products, and that's why model success. You know, Elliot Coleman said a long, long time ago, probably 30 years ago, and that's why I started doing a project called Model Farms. And I picked out these model farms, and we had a little sign to put by the road. It had to be a farm that was willing to share what they're doing and being very successful. Elliot Coleman said, if we want to change agriculture, go to every township and select a farm. You got to pick the guy with a pretty big ego. And you say, we got a new method of farming, and you've been selected because you're really good at this, and we want you to implement this system of farming. He was talking about organic, and he said, and we're doing this in every county, because then you'll be field days on your farms, there'll be promotion. He said, you realize what would happen? Would you want to be the one that failed?
No.
No. You got all these guys that are really good farmers in every township, and they know they're playing against all those others. He said they'll get out and hand weed at midnight if they have to. They'll not fail. They'll not fail because if they fail, they know how bad they'll look. So he said, do you realize what that would do? Now we got them scattered in amongst the communities all over this countryside. So I had model farms for a while. The trouble was I had people that wanted to be model farms. It was just the monitoring and keeping track of it, and to tell someone, no, you don't fit my criteria, was hard for me to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a good idea, actually.
Yeah, I thought that's how we can spread it around, get these farms out here that are willing. That was why I said, like that guy over there by North Dakota Pond, and what he's doing now is a model farm is actually what he's doing, and he's going through it. And now he's a real thinker and really passionate. He's a model farm for transitioning a 700-acre dairy farm into a new farming system. And now he's selling his cows, but he's going to custom raise heifers for a neighbor big dairy farm.
Yeah.
Help is a problem. His son doesn't want to do it. All those issues.
That is an issue. But I think we just it comes back to your systems approach, where if you create a system that makes people want to get into it, then...
Yeah. And that's why I said that farm up north there by Abbotsford that I made him go through my class when he started. Now his sons are really clever. One married the dairy nutrition person, and one married the local veterinarian. So he's got a dairy nutrition person in the family and a veterinarian in the family.
That's
now
good.
They're really good farmers, and they got robots. They invest in a lot, 400 cows. There's a lot of robots. He said, no. And the one son never married, and he said, I like being out in the barn. I don't spend less time in the barn, but it's different time in the barn. You're watching the cows, and you're more of a manager of technology and equipment and cows as considered a labor of milker.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, we appreciate you.
All right, well, I appreciate
what are you up to? Anyone can come see you in the next few weeks, or where are you heading?
Well, I'm really busy I've got meetings. I got snowed out this week. I'm doing Wells, Minnesota next week, and I'm doing down in Hillsdale, Illinois, and then I'm doing a 2-day class up with. It's not many people signed up for in Aberdeen, South Dakota. I'm doing a 2-day class, which is a lot for me to. I done it 1 day up in Guelph, Ontario, and so then I'm going up the end of March. I'm going up there for a week. I know it's in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and then doing that organic conference. They don't start farming very early, so you can do meetings the end of March up there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And a lot of that's some regen farms, and so I'm pretty busy until then. When April comes along, I can now get back to my farm with my greenhouse isn't put together yet. I do all the gardening for the farming. I want to start my plants. That's my scale of farm and that big equipment Nick's got, I can't run that stuff. I do the rotary hoeing, old tractors, no GPS. I'm from a different generation.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate what you do.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. We're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experiences.